Good evening to one and all. Dear companions of the Satsang, a very good evening. Namaste, Namaskar, Sasvikar. I'm truly humbled with the invite I've had to share my thoughts on nature, nurture, and mind to this very enlightened platform. I'm grateful to the School of Ancient Wisdom and Apollo Hospitals for giving me this platform to share my thoughts, not only on nature, nurture, and the mind, but what is the impact it has on the health and wellness. The interlink health and wellness has got on nature, nurture, and the mind. I think it's important for us to spend the next 40 minutes or so just trying to understand this interlink between the three, the nature, the nurture, and the mind. It is my thought and opinion that the cause and cure for all ailments we see today lies in the Mother Nature. The way we nurture the nature and nurture ourselves can actually alter the process and outcomes. The mind in the middle of all of this plays a very vital role in this interaction. Let us try and understand what actually is nature. Nature is the ecology around us, the biology around us, the genetic predispositions we have, the impact it has on the human traits, the upbringing we go through in the midst of this nature can all be responsible for our health and wellness. The contaminated water we consume is a part of nature. The polluted environment we see is a part of nature. The food we eat, which is contaminated with chemicals, is again a part of nature, which has an impact on our health and wellness. The concept of nurturing, whether it is environmental nurturing or the nurturing of oneself, constituting the environmental influences, can have a significant impact on one's health and wellness. The nurturing also incorporates one's upbringing, one's training the self, taming the self, the cultures, the customs, the habits, and the mentoring that goes on, training the body, the mind, and the soul. What actually is the mind? The more we try to understand the mind, the less we know about it. But a number of psychologists, social scientists have actually tried to research what mind is. And they've essentially put it down to a set of faculties, including both cognitive as well as non-cognitive aspects. Things like consciousness, things like imagination, perception, thinking, intelligence, judgment, language, memory. They're all part of the cognitive sciences we look into. But the softer aspect of the mind is the non-cognitive part of it. The emotions we go through, the laugh, the cry, and the instincts we face, all this form the non-cognitive part of the mind. People have again and again talked about the relationship between the mind and the soul. Is there a form, a shape, a structure to mind? Probably not. It's probably the interconnect of the different neurons in the system, causing a connect between the neurons, the hormones, and the psychology. A neurohormonal system is what probably forms the mind, in addition to the heart we talk about. But what actually is the soul? I think it's an abstract form where a spiritual form is given to part of the mind, which people have called it as soul. If you actually look at this slide, 4 simple figures can actually put my talk together. I think we, the current generation people who are living in this Mother Nature, have got the responsibility to leave this world a better place to live for the future generations to come. If we start connecting the nature, the nurture that happens both with the environment and with our own selves, and the mind, which has got the most robust influence amongst all 3, I think we can do wonders in this world when it comes to health and wellness. If you can take one slide from this talk, I think probably it is this. The husband of life we are going through, the urban nature of lifestyle we have adapted to, the materialistic things we run behind, time and money. If we can leave them behind and move on to a peaceful, pain-free, hassle-free, rural life with no hassles, I think that is probably the best thing one can achieve. Fresh drinking water, fresh air to breathe, and organic, less contaminated food grains to feed on. Ladies and gentlemen, the remit I have been given is to connect nature, nurture, and the mind into our health and wellness. People have researched a lot to look into what is health, what actually is illness. Is there something we can do to prevent the illnesses we are going through? So on and so forth. However, if you look at the influence the environment, the nature, and the nurture has on our health, the slide says it all. The air pollution, lack of sanitation, the impure water we consume, the chemicals that have contaminated our environment, the radiational exposures we have, the light and the sound pollution we go through, the occupational risks that we put across, the modernized newer agricultural practices, use of pesticides, contaminated seedlings, environments which are hazardous to health, and last not the least, the climate change we are going through. All of this has an impact on one's health and wellness. On the aspect of nature, on the aspect of nurture, how we tame our human body to be fit, to be well, to be sound is not an easy task. Let me draw your attention to an Egyptian proverb that goes to say, 1/4 of what you eat keeps you alive. The other 3/4 that you eat keeps the doctors alive. So much true. So it talks about the concept of indulgence of oneself in food and drink. I do not know how many of you can understand Kannada, but there's a proverb which goes, Atiyadalli amrutavu vishavaguttade. In excess, even nectar can become poison. That's what it means. What we are trying to do is indulge ourselves into too much of food and drink, thereby leading to our own destruction. Ladies and gentlemen, what I would like to do is, I would like to run through a small exercise for your mind. What I would like to do is, I would like your kind selves to close your eyes, literally for about 45 seconds. Start concentrating on your breathing pattern. A deep breath in, breathe out. You can essentially start feeling the breath of air going through your nose, going through the back of your throat, going through the respiratory system into the lungs. And if one can imagine, it is reaching those little sacs of air to exchange with the blood vessels. When you're concentrating on this, start concentrating on another sound that goes lub, tub, lub, tub. The heart is beating to the rhythm of your breathing. In the midst of this, there has been some amount of bad news that has come to your mind. The next of your kin, your brother, your sister, your husband, your father, your mother, one of your next of kin has been suspected to have cancer. With your eyes closed, with your heart racing off, with your breaths becoming faster, just think about one thing that comes to your mind. One thing that your mind goes through. It could be fear. It could be pain. It could be ignorance. It could be seen as ugly. It could be seen as a battle. Some perceive it as death. Some perceive it as destruction. Some perceive it as darkness. Some just go blank. Let us come to the reality, ladies and gentlemen. Let us all open our eyes back and come back to reality. With a deep breath in, ladies and gentlemen, let us get to the title of our talk, Nature, Nurture, and the Mind. In context to health and wellness, the next 35 minutes or so, I'm going to talk about health and wellness, put some thoughts on cancers and the molecular basis of cancer, the scale of the problem, and try and create some awareness and leave you with a note on decision making. We spoke about health for quite some time now, but do we really understand what is health? ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಆರೋಗ್ಯ ಅಂತೇವೆ, ಹಿಂದಿ ಮೇ ಬೋಲ್ತೆ ಆರೋಗ್ಯ. Do we really understand the meaning of health and wellness? People have looked into it. Number of psychologists have researched into it. Freud was one of them who looked into the state of health, researched about state of health for a number of decades to come up with this simple thing to say health, arogya, is a balance between the physical form, the mental state of mind, and the social well-being, and just not mere absence of disease or infirmity. This is what WHO says, which has been researched and has been put to the community by a number of researchers in the centuries and decades gone by. So if we think wellness is about a state of physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being, what is illness? आरोग्य तो समझ में आया, अनारोग्य क्या है? It essentially means disruption of any of these three components we see in the balance of health. It could be a fractured bone. It could be a broken limb.
Open this చూసాను, ఆపరేషన్ చూపించాను, కట్అవుట్ పోయింది సార్, ఇదేమో చేసేసేది దొంగ పనుల కొడుకులని, అప్పుడు అన్ని చేయి.
It could be a state of mind where somebody is feeling depressed, or it could be a state of isolation like a lot of us have been through in the recent times. When we're talking about these illness or being unwell, what comes to all our minds is the non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases are संक्रामक रोग जो होते हैं उनको बोलते हैं infectious diseases. जो संक्रामक रोग नहीं होते उनको बोलते हैं non-communicable diseases. So these are the cardiovascular diseases, the heart attacks, the strokes, the diabetics, the cancers that we see. Ladies and gentlemen, the World Health Organization tells us that 60% of the deaths and the disabilities that are coming through are because of non-communicable diseases. I put this to an analogy of Mahavira Buddha. I'm sure a lot of you would have heard about the story of Gautami. Gautami was a lady in her 20s, 30s, who actually lost her child and walked down to Mahavira when he was meditating and says, yelling, screaming, crying, "My Lord, bring my little one back to life." Mahavira, in his senses, informs her with utmost calm, utmost patience, saying that, "Gautami, no problem. But could you do me a favor? Could you? Can you fetch me a mustard seed from a household that has not seen death, and I will bring your little one back to life?" Gautami, in the state of her mind, starts from household to household, village to village, town to town, and comes back having been enlightened, having been understood the pains, the sufferings, and the reality of life. If one thing is guaranteed in life is the end, the death, the mortality, and she becomes a favorite disciple of Mahavira. As common as the death is the non-communicable diseases that we see today. I'll be surprised if any one of you would say to me that neither some of your family members or near and far relatives have not got any of the above diseases spoken about. Diabetes, hypertension, strokes, heart attacks, and cancers. Such is the incidence, common prevalence of these non-communicable diseases, and one of them, which is growing like a beast, is the cancers. If we do not know where we come from, how do we know where to go, goes the saying. So I think it is important we understand a touch of history of non-communicable diseases, in particular about the cancers. Cancers have been talked about from the period of Hippocrates. The Sanskrit literature talks about carcinos, karka, karkata, meaning cancer. So cancers have been there from times immemorial. But the real research into cancers, chemotherapies, radiotherapy started during the world wars, again by an accident more than anything else. The management of these cancers have become more multidisciplinary. It is not one person playing the game, but it's a team playing the game in the management of these cancers, ladies and gentlemen. This one slide essentially talks about some basics of cancer. People see cancer as a taboo. People see cancer as the beginning of the end. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, cancer is essentially a part of the evolution in one's life. If one ripens to the ripe age, there is a good chance that he or she would have gone through a type of cancer. If one lives up to the age of 80, there's a good chance that 1 in 3 of you would have gone through some or the other type of cancer in your lifetime. To put it into the context, human body is an amazing creation. I think it's the most beautiful creation the world has seen. The Lord has created us in a beautiful form, shape, and function. It doesn't matter whether you're an Afro-Caribbean or a European, with your dark or whether you're well colored, you're the tall or short. What matters is the structure, is the form. Within this beautiful human body, various organs are placed, and they're all interconnected, connecting with the mind. These organs have got cells, and these cells are the most sophisticated form of computers we see. Within these cells is the nucleus. Within the nucleus is the chromatin, which is nothing but the data that the cell carries. And each cell has got a unique data. When the cells change, when one dies and the next one takes birth, the data that was present in the cell is religiously transferred to the next cell. In the process, the chromatin or the DNA can undergo changes, and we call this mutation changes. When there is a mutation in the cell, that cell becomes an abnormal cell, a bad cell. When a bad cell comes up in the middle of a group of good cells, the body tries to kill that bad cell in a very organized way, and this process is termed as apoptosis, or programmed cell death. It is as simple as a weed growing in your lawn, and you just plug the weed and throw it away, and the system is back to normal. When a bad cell cannot be destroyed, there is a problem. The bad cell from 1 becomes 2, 4, 16, 32, and multiplies to become a lump, a mass, a bad mass. Hindi mein bolte hai durmas. It becomes a bad mass or cancer or malignancy. That is how simple cancer is. Cancer is nothing extraordinarily bad, but it is a stage in the evolution of your lives. It's a bunch of bad cells. When it ulcerates, starts invading, it becomes cancer and can be harmful to oneself. The number of cells in your body, the number of types of cells in your body, that many number of cancers one can find. Think about a smoker having oral cancer, lung cancer. Think about a breast cancer, obesity, smoking, alcohol. Think about bad eating habits, excessive consumption of red meat, alcohol, smoking, obesity. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw your attention to this figure in the middle. The most feared enemy, more than your smoking, more than your alcohol, more than your red meat, is obesity, being overweight. Overweight is associated with probably 90% of the cancers in your body. And this is the one which we need to be worried about. And that is where your nature, nurture, and mind can come into play. Let us see what is the burden of the disease. Ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the incidence. We know that the incidence of cancer is going up. What could be the reason for this? As informed, I think longevity is one of the key causes. What is longevity? We are living much longer than what we did in the past. Today, the average lifespan in India is about 68 years, 6-8 years. A decade ago, it was much lesser than that. Britain, 81.3. Sweden, 83.5. Japan, nearly 90. Africa, about 45. So I think longevity itself is a risk factor to have cancers. The longer we live, there's an increased risk of having a cancer. That doesn't mean that we should end our life soon. There are better diagnostics now. CT scans, MRIs, PET scans. There are better treatment modalities. There's more awareness about cancers. People can afford therapies or treatments more. The states which used to be healthcare providers have become healthcare insurers now. And ladies and gentlemen, the risk factors. The reversible risk factors and irreversible risk factors.
Doctor, please switch on your video.
Risk factors. There's not a lot you and me can do about them. It is the reversible risk factors we can work on. That is where our nature, nurture, and the mind comes into play, ladies and gentlemen. Think about the nature around you. Let me give you some examples. Delhi is called as the lung cancer capital of India. Young men in their 20s, young girls in their 20s have lung cancers. Non-smokers, but they are troubled with lung cancers. It's the pollution around them. Bangalore is called as the breast cancer capital of India. Alcohol in young women, smoking, oral contraceptive pills, not getting married at the right age, so delayed marriages, not having children, not breastfeeding, sedentary lifestyle, stress. All these are fueling the growth of breast cancers in Bangalore. Girls in their 20s, pregnant women are getting breast cancers. In addition to the problems with the nature, the nurturing we are doing to our body is not helping the incidence of cancers. And mind. India is a great country. We gave spirituality to the whole world. We gave yoga to the whole world. When the whole universe is adapting yoga, we are still limping with adaptation of yoga, meditation, spirituality. It is not about religion. It is about the practices that happen in the religion. I think the mind comes to play here because the psychoneuroimmunology, stronger the mind, stronger the hypothalamic stimulus, stronger the pituitary, stronger the hormones, stronger the immune system, and stronger is the care of the cancer, stronger is the way we fight with the cancer and we overcome the problem. We win over it. We become cancer survivors. I think the nature, nurture, and the mind have got a great role to play in management of cancers. Cancers, nevertheless, cause deaths, cause disabilities, and it is important that we prevent and create awareness of the same. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very busy slide, but the summary of it is this. There is an ever increasing colonic cancers, lung cancers. When it comes to urban cities like Bangalore, Chennai, and Delhi, bowel cancers are growing. Northeast of India has got the highest incidence of several cancers. This is again going back to the nature. Pockets of Kerala, pockets of northeast of the country see a lot of bowel cancers. Reason being the nature and the nurture. So let me give you an example of the nature in the northeast of the country. The water that is consumed, the fish which is eaten in excess is actually contaminated with lead. Lead is carcinogenic. And lead comes from the garment industries in the northeast of the country, from Bangladesh, from Calcutta. A lot of garment industries, they release the colored water, the washed effluents into the water, which is rich in lead. The fish you consume is rich in lead, which is carcinogenic. The tinned fish, the tinned pickled fish, the red meat, all these things are carcinogenic, and hence is the rise in the number of cancers, both in the northeast as well as in pockets of Kerala. This is by nature as well as nurture, because not only they eat contaminated food, that is coming from the nature, but their food habits, the way they have nurtured themselves. Excessive red meat, lack of exercise, increased alcohol intake, increased smoking, lack of high fiber diet, lack of exercise, lack of meditation, lack of prayers, puts their immune system down, builds their risk factor profile, and there we go. That is a sitting receipt for cancers. So I think it is all within the nature, the nurture, and the mind, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want to go through these slides, but what it's in summary tells us is the urban clusters see a lot more cancers as compared to the rural population. And this slide essentially tells us that if one lives up to 74 years in India, there's a good chance that 1 in 7 will have a cancer if you're a female, and 1 in 8 people will have a cancer if you're a male. As you go up to 80, that is Western data, 1 in 3 will have a cancer of some or the other type. So we do know that there are cancers, and we do know that the cancers are going up. What they bring to you is that fear. Is the fear of unknown, the feeling of darkness, and the ignorance to see what will be the next step. What will be the doctors doing? What stage of cancer is this? Is this curable? Am I going to die? How long have I got to live? So it is the fear of unknown and the ignorance, ladies and gentlemen. You do not understand the journey that the patient would go through, or the journey the family would go through. There are two things that happen. The first thing majority of the millennial crowd do, or the internet geeks do, or majority of us, what we do, we first start Googling things. The second thing we start doing is start hunting to put the finances together for care of this cancer. These are the two things that happen. But what we really need to understand is what is the journey that happens when somebody is suspected to have a cancer. As mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, cancer is not new. It's been there for ages immemorial, and we have made substantiated progress in terms of cancer care. I did mention about the Second World War, the First World War, and it was the gases they used to harm the enemies, the mustard gas, which actually led to the observation that that gas has got a chemotherapeutic agent. That is what has led to a lot of research. The common anti-cancer drugs are coming from plants. Again, the nature itself is giving us cure for a lot of cancers. The vincristine, the vinblastine, they're all cancer drugs, producing natural plants which we use. History has shown us a lot about cancers. And what we really need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is not about the depth and the molecular aspects of cancer, but what is it important to prevent cancers, or if you are suspected to have a cancer, how do we deal with it? That is what is important, ladies and gentlemen. And I think in that aspect, it is important for one to understand what are symptoms. Lakshan kya hote hai is very important to understand. So symptoms, how do they present is important, and what happens when they go to the hospital is important. Let me give you a small example, ladies and gentlemen. Cancers are getting more and more, no doubt, but they are not extensive. If 100 people walk to my hospital today having rectal bleeding or having symptoms that are not normal to them, only about 4 to 5 people have cancers. So 95 of them don't have a cancer. So there is no need to panic. But what is important is to understand the symptoms, ladies and gentlemen. Let me give you, compared to 100 symptomatic patients who are coming to me, let me pick up 100,000 people from Bannerghatta Road. 100,000 people. 1,00,000 लोगों को बुला के लाएंगे अस्पताल में. And we take a history, we scan them, we screen them, and we evaluate them for cancers. You know the number of cancers we might pick up? Probably between 8 to 10. Not much at all. However, in the context, you pick up 100 symptomatic patients जिनमें लक्षण होते हैं, जिनमें symptoms होते हैं, out of this 100, you pick up good 4 to 6 cancers, which is as good as the general population. So I think it is important to understand what symptoms are. So I will put a few things as examples, ladies and gentlemen. A smoker keeps smoking, has an ulcer on the lip, goes away, comes back, ulcer on the lip, the ulcer goes back. Again, keeps smoking, ulcer on the lip, the ulcer doesn't go away. Probably it is a cancer. Somebody has got a cough. Normal for a lot of people. Take some tablets, take some inhalers, settles down. Cough with a bit of phlegm. Normal for a lot of people. But now, cough, phlegm, a bit of blood starts coming. This is not normal. That is a worrying symptom. इसको लक्षण बोलते हैं. A lot of women reach menopause, 50, 52, 55. The monthly cycle stop. रक्तस्राव होने का जो प्रक्रिया होता है, that stops at 52, 55. Suddenly, there is a new onset bleeding that happens. That is worrying. That is a symptom. Somebody goes to the toilet once a day, every day, regularly. Suddenly, it becomes 4 times a day. Sudden change without any intervention. You have not changed diet. You've not started on any new medications. You've not gone on, a different lifestyle altogether. Suddenly your bowel habit has changed. That's a symptom. And you start having blood through your back passage. That's a symptom. So these are the symptoms, ladies and gentlemen. Symptoms are those manifestations which are not normal to oneself and which cannot be explained by a reason. That is what a symptom is. And if this symptom comes through or you notice this, you better go to a doctor who can separate the dust from the gold and tell whether there's a problem or not. Googling is probably a bad idea. And what it does is, ladies and gentlemen, it makes a well person a worried well. Usme manasik rog is created. So manorog ko, there is no maddu. Maddu is drug. There is no medication for mental illness when it comes from such a thing. So what I would say is, Googling is certainly not recommended. You can see, but don't hitch on to what they say. Better go and see a doctor who can put things together, cross the T's, dot the I's, connect the dots, and get to a diagnosis. So how are the diagnoses made? If there is a lump, we need to pick up a biopsy from the lump. Suppose the lump is on the face, no problem, you can biopsy it. Neck lump, biopsy it. Breast lump, biopsy it. If the lump is in the gut, the large bowel, small bowel, stomach, you endoscopy and biopsy it. When they biopsy it, what is that they would like to see? As we explained, we need to see those cells which are not regular, which are irregular, which have got a bad chromatin, and which are too many, far too many. That is when we diagnose them as cancer. Now we have diagnosed them as cancer. What is the next stage we do? We want to stage them. What is stage 1, 2, 3, 4? So it is simple. Now we have understood cancer is nothing but a bad cell becoming a lump. If the cancer is just there where it took its birth, whether it's in your eyes or tongue or throat or breast or wherever, if it is there in the place where it has taken birth and has not spread, it is very early, stage 1. If it has grown in the same place involving the walls of that particular organ, but not involving the lymph glands around them, stage 2. But if it's involved the lymph glands around it, stage 3. And if it's gone far, lungs, livers, abdomen, brain, stage 4. Stage 1 and 2, you can easily cure. Stage 3, you might need some chemotherapy to help out. Stage 4, it is difficult to cure, but mostly manage with radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and an operation if necessary. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I have essentially highlighted in the last 25 minutes is about, what is nature, what is nurture, and how does the mind play its role? What is health? What is wellness? What is illness? And what is the reason for the non-communicable diseases? The role the nature plays, the nurturing plays, the mind plays on the non-communicable diseases and cancer. I've highlighted a bit of basics of cancer. I've put through the incidence of cancers. I've talked through the journey of cancers from symptoms, diagnosis, and staging. This is actually the easier bit, ladies and gentlemen. The difficulty in cancer is not the operation, is not the chemotherapy, is not the radiotherapy. It is the decision making. Decisions are difficult than incisions, goes the saying. What is the right treatment for this particular patient is important. Unfortunately, we live in a commercial world. We are driven by money in healthcare. Same is the situation in the United States of America, wherein decisions are skewed, decisions are biased because of the commercial interests. That is where the tumor boards, the multidisciplinary teams come into play, because for somebody, the best treatment to start with might be radiotherapy, might be chemotherapy or surgery. But the person taking the call will be biased if it is an individual decision. If you land up with a surgeon, the surgeon would sharpen his knives well before the tumor board. If you go to chemotherapy or a medical oncologist, you probably would have had some amount of chemo before you land up with an operation. If you land up with a radiation oncologist, you might have had some radiation before you come to mainstream treatment. So I think what is important for you guys to understand is decisions are difficult than incisions. Any cancer care should not be treated without a tumor board being a part of the decision-making process. And various options have to be evaluated. Sometimes doing nothing is the best treatment option. It has to be borne in mind when it comes to cancer. And then once the treatment decisions are made, we actually treat the cancer in whichever way it is apt, whether it's chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery, or a combination of these things. And once the treatment is done, we do follow these patients up for 5 years, look at outcomes, targets, and quality assurance. Some examples of cancers: head and neck, tobacco chewing, smoking, lung smoking, female cancers, we talked about it. We also talked about the colorectal cancers or the GI cancers. We talked about various symptoms. We talked about the investigations and referral patterns. We utilize number of imaging tools such as ultrasound, CTs, endoscopies, PET scans. I told you we need to look at the microscope to say whether it's cancer or not. We stage them as explained, put them through a tumor board, and then decide on the treatment based on what is required. Just to re-emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, surgery is easy. Chemo is easy, radiotherapy is easy, but the decision to treat is difficult. Action is easy, decision to act is difficult, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are living in an era of modernization, globalization, and it is not easy given the movements that is happening around the world. So it is not just what books say, it is just not what Google says, but it is about taking the patient into account. You're not treating the cancer, ladies and gentlemen. You're actually treating the patient who has got the cancer. This has to be borne in mind. Look at this: an oral cancer, a lung cancer, a breast cancer, a bowel cancer, a small and a big bowel cancer. And what we should not forget is not we are treating these cancers, we are treating this gentleman with the cancer. Sometimes doing nothing is the best treatment for cancer. Untouched, this patient might live for another 3 years, and touched or intervened by an operation, we might kill this patient before the disease kills him. That has to be borne in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, cancer does not spare anybody. Cancer does not spare the royals, does not spare famous personalities, does not spare the rich, the poor, the ugly. But it chooses 3 different categories of people, ladies and gentlemen. It chooses the winners, it chooses the losers, and it chooses the fighters. So this is 3 groups of people. And here, what is important is your nurturing and your mind. The way we build our immune system, the way we tame our mind to strengthen the immune system. And this is where psycho, neuro, immunology comes into play. A robust mind, a robust brain yoga, positive thinking, mindfulness, and you have the strength in the mind to say, yes, I can do it. I will win over the cancer. That translates to hippocampus, that translates to hypothalamus, that translates to the brain, where it sends signals off to the immune system to generate more T cells, to generate more fighter cells. And that in turn suppresses the cancer cells, that in turn makes you win over the cancer. That is the power of your immune system. That is the power of your mind. So what is important, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the mind. The power of touch is also very important. Just a hand, a compassionate and empathetic hand of a clinician can do wonders which cannot be forgotten. So we have winners here, we have fighters here. Look at Yuvraj Singh. He's a man who's won over the game, and he's the winner. Look at Monisha Koirala. She's a winner. Look at Anand Kumar. He's a loser. Likewise, we have to move people from the losing group to the fighting group to become the winners. And that is what our thought should be. And that is where your nature, nurture, and mind comes into play, ladies and gentlemen. So once we have diagnosed cancer and we think the patient needs an operation, then we can treat it in a number of ways. As a surgeon, for me, there's a saying in English, there's no one way to Rome. You can take number of ways that can lead us to Rome. So it is in Kannada. They say, there is no one way to Kashi. Kashiಗೆ ಒಂದು ದಾರಿ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ. So likewise, you can do an open operation, you can do a laparoscopic operation, you can do a robotic operation. Similarly, you can give different types of chemotherapies and immunotherapies. And when cancer is advanced, it is important for us to treat the patient with a cancer who cannot be cured with kindness, with compassion, with love. Keep the patient comfortable, keep him or her pain-free, and give them the right they deserve to die with dignity. This is what palliative care does. We have to bear this in mind. Different types of medical therapies. And once the cancers have all been dealt with, we follow these patients for 5 years based on evaluations. And the difference between early and late cancers is this, gentlemen. If you pick up an early bowel cancer after 5 years, 95% of them are still alive and well. But if you pick up a late cancer, ladies and gentlemen, at 5 years, there are only 5 people alive. So the difference between life and death is an early cancer and a late cancer. That is the reason you need to be aware of cancers. You need to be aware of the symptoms of cancers. And if you can get help at the right time, you're a winner for sure. As an institution, as a responsible institution doing cancer care, we also look into quality assurance and make sure the care we provide is at best standards compared to the rest of the world. As I said, there's no one way we can do. We can do these operations in a number of ways, and we are actually heading towards a subspecialist care in the process. There's a nice say that goes in the literature. What is important? Is it the civilization or is it the documentation of civilization? I think one of the reasons India has lost out in the current world is we had the best civilizations in the world. The Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, the Indian civilizations were probably the best. But the sad state of affairs is the best documentation of our civilization is not with us and it's with somebody else. So I think we not only do the work, but we also document things, publish, and we move on to provide a better care to the rest of the world. So ladies and gentlemen, let us all open our eyes bright, take a deep breath in and out, and cancer, it's not that bad. I'm sure you can see hope, you can see cure, you can see life after cancer, you can see the courage in the people who have had cancer, the strength in the people who have had cancer, the peace, the happiness. And in fact, people who actually appreciate life are the ones who have gone through cancer and who are survivors. So I think as clinicians, as people, as population, it is important for us to create that awareness, to tell people to seek advice, reduce the risk factors where we utilize the nature to cure our cancers, utilize the nature to prevent more cancers coming, protect the nature, preserve the nature, enhance the nature, increase the greenery, reduce the pollution, reduce the contaminants in the food, reduce contaminants in water, stop smoking. Physically tame yourself, nurture your body, burn the calories, reduce the obesity, and utilize your mind, yoga, meditation, prayers, so that you can win over this beast called as cancers. As professionals, we create the awareness, do early screening, diagnosis, and treatment. And a lot has to be said about the policymakers, the government, who has to act on protecting the nature, nurturing the population, and also look at improving ways of strengthening the mind. Not but last the least, ladies and gentlemen, let us be the change you want to see in the world. It could be as simple as not using the plastic bottles to drink water. It could be as simple as quitting smoking today. It could be as simple as telling your neighborhood to say, look, this causes cancer, can you stop it? It could be as simple as pulling your car when you travel to work. It could be as simple as planting a sapling in your backyard. It could be as simple as growing your own vegetables in the backyard. All these things can make a huge difference, ladies and gentlemen. So let us all arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached. And let us leave this world a better place for the future generations to come. And with this, I'll leave you with that note telling that, decision making in surgery and cancer care is not an easy task. Decisions are more difficult than incisions. With this note, I would like to close the talk, and I would like to take any questions if there are. And one thing to mention and disclose is I myself, I'm a very nature person, and I run a small eco museum called as Nandi Nisargadam on the foothills of Nandi. So you're all very welcome to visit at your time. With this, I would like to draw this talk to a close and open the forum for discussion. Thank you.
So much, Doctor. That was really enlightening and interesting. Now, are there any questions? I think there is. We look in the chat box. Kindly unmute yourselves and ask your questions. Someone has said, gripping, intense, and captivating. Wonderful session, Doctor. Okay. I'm sure others have questions. Kindly unmute yourselves and ask your questions.
Madam, I'm Kapoor. May I know what are the details available or what type of treatment is being given at Nisarg Dham near Nandi Hills?
Sir, it is a very nature place. It's not a commercial organization. It is something from my heart. This has got a herbal garden. It is on the foothills, a place to walk, a place to enjoy the nature, a lot of bird watching, a lot of water facilities. And it is something for people to go and put their feet up in the mother nature. That's all it is.
Is there any place to stay overnight?
Overnight, there is a place, sir, but you'll have to book it well in advance.
Where is the location?
It is on the foothills of Nandi, sir.
Oh, yes, I'm very familiar. But how do we reach that place? I mean, it's the location exact. I have seen Nandi Hills.
Very easy. So when you go towards Nandi Hills, there's a T junction called as Karahalli Cross. If you turn to left, you go to the hilltop. If you take to right, you go towards the foothill to the temple Nandi. 2 kilometers down the line, there is a development called as QVC Hills, which is a villa development. Opposite to that on the foothill is the farm, sir.
Okay. So we head for the Nandi Hills and then short of that.
Short of that, before you don't take to left, turn right, and about 2 kilometers you'll find. So it is, you Google Nandi Nisargadam and it will take you to the locations.
Okay, thank you. Very intriguing lecture. Only thing, if it is recorded, I kindly request them to share it, because there are certain things which I am also in studying MSc Yoga, where it talks of non-communicable diseases. Very interesting. I'd like to hear if the recording is. Thank you very much.
It has been recorded and it will come on the WhatsApp group. So if any of you are not on the WhatsApp group, kindly give your name and number in the chat and we'll add you.
Doctor, ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ಮಾಲತಿ ಜಾನ್. Thank you very much. ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಭಾಷಣ. I want to ask you, I just wanted to tell you something that you gave us so many salient points by which we could take precautions against this disease, and then once you contract it, that you have to use a lot of courage also, which is a big incentive as well as a big help for the patients. But don't you think when the fear element, which naturally kind of creeps in, it's very essential that people should also be counseled to overcome this fear? Because I think once you get a lot of fear, your immunity goes down a bit because you get into depressions and things like that. But don't you think fear is also something that one has to overcome or deal
Altuve,
with?
you're absolutely spot on. Yeah. So our glass, half glass full sort of phenomenon. So the first dark slide we had, fear was the first thing that people talked about. Yes, you're right. So we talked about strengthening the immune system. Things like fear, anxiety, depression can bring your immune system down. And a comprehensive cancer care should have and must have a psycho-oncologist on board. And some of the hospitals do, some of them don't.
Where
And
is
that
the
is where
speaker?
the Indian system is so helpful.
No, this one here.
Social support at home is very important. Yoga is important. Prayers are important. And that is where a strong mind leads to a stronger immunity. Let me give you an example, madam. So this is science I'm talking about. So going back to about 15 years ago, there was a research study done by Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital from New York and HCG Hospital in Bangalore. Two groups of women were stage matched for breast cancer. So they were matched for their stage of breast cancer. The American group went through their standard therapy, but the Indian group, in addition to the standard therapy, they went through mindfulness and a programmed yoga session religiously as a programmed activity. And they measured the length of survival, they measured the quality of life in terms of the happiness and the depression scales, and they went on to measure the inflammatory cytokines in the body, interleukin 1, 6, 8, tumor necrosis alpha. And surprise, surprise, the length of survival slightly up in the Indian group, but the happiness quotient, the pain-free periods, feeling of well-being, the quality of life was very good and much better than the American group. Surprisingly, the inflammatory cytokines, which cause trouble, were much lesser in the Indian group compared to the Western group. So this is just not psychoneuroimmunology, there is science behind it. So I think we should promote more of that. And this is where, the awareness counts, and this is where the policymakers have to help out in promoting, whether it is, psychology, whether it's yoga, whether it's Ayurveda, and even a good family support for that matter can have a huge difference on the cancer care we provide. It can make people who are losers to cancer to become fighters, and fighters to actually become winners. I think that's what is my thought. But thank you for lightening this current topic of interest. Thank you.
Doctor, someone else has written something in the chat saying it is a very energetic talk and has given a booster dose to all of us. How simply, without fear, one can come out with cancer, maintaining nature, nurture, and with positive thoughts and changing lifestyle. Okay. Any other questions?
Ma'am, there's one more question in the chat.
Yes, someone said thoughts but unfortunately, most of the cancer physicians suggest a lot of intervention, thereby complicating, leading to miserable death. How would you respond to that?
No, madam, I think it's a very intellectual, practical point. So I told you not long ago, India is a commercially driven country when it comes to healthcare. Okay. And I said to you, one is the decision-making process, which can be skewed if it is not dealt in a dedicated tumor board. Because somebody in the group will question, why are you doing this? Maybe this is not the right thing. So one is that. The second thing is, again, to re-emphasize, we are not treating a cancer here. We are treating a person who's harboring a cancer. We're treating a person with a lump inside, but we're not treating the lump. But unfortunately, the state of affairs is we treat the lump than the person with the lump. Let me give you an example. This is a study that comes from Great Britain, published 2012, published in the Annals of Surgery, comes from St. Mark's Hospital. Omar Faiz is the senior author. They looked at the HES database. What we mean by HES database is hospital episode statistics. They picked up 16,500 patients who had gone through operations in Britain, but they were all above the age of 80. Above the age of 80. And they looked at how did these patients do over a course of 1 year. So these were all patients who had bowel cancer. When you operated on patients above the age of 80, 1 in 3 died in the first month after surgery. So 30% of them did not make the first month. Not because of the surgery, because of the consequences of the surgery. Stroke, heart attack, chest infections, falls, and blood clots. So you have 2 more who are above 80, whom they followed up for 11 months after the first month. And surprise, surprise, they lost 1 more in the next 11 months. So at the end of 1 year, when you operate on the people above 80, you lose 2 out of 3 people. And if you have thought about it, the smaller cancers, you could have left it or given some radiotherapy and got them symptom relief, they probably would have survived a lot longer. So what I'm trying to tell is sometimes doing nothing or doing minimal is probably the best treatment for that patient. If there is somebody who's 30 with the same cancer, somebody with 80 with the same cancer, it will be unjustified to do the same operation, given the age, given the physiology. And as I said, the average lifespan in India is 68. If you're 82, you're already on the bonus period, and it's not the right thing to put you to pain, suffering, cost expenses if the gain that is gained is only marginal. That is my thought.
Thank you, Doctor. There's another question. At what stage of cancer you suggest doing nothing is the best option?
Madam, I wouldn't say that age is a bar, because then I will be, an ageist, which is not right, because I think it is not the chronological age we look at, it's the physiological age. You could have a fit 85-year-old. Now I've currently got a patient who's 85 and is going through rectal cancer treatment. She was a brilliant scholar, spent time in Britain and has come back. But you might have a 45-year-old who is as good as 80-year-old when it comes to physiology. Heart attacks, strokes, obesity, smoking. So it is not the age number per se, but it's the physiological age, I would say.
Thank you. There's someone who would like your email ID.
I'll certainly share that, ma'am.
Are there any other questions or not?
I have a question.
Yes,
Sajani.
go ahead, Ramesh.
Namaste, Dr. Narasimhaiah.
Namaste.
It was very interesting discussion that we had in our Satsang today. I have a question. As a master's graduate from the UK, during my research for design, I came across this information that at least 30 to 40 countries around the world use alternative therapies like Kirlian cameras for diagnosis. Now, such diagnoses are increasingly being accepted as very useful to prevent or preempt such terminal illnesses like cancer. What is the situation here in India? And such a kind of diagnostic tool would be a very fit with our own ancient culture. So what is the status right now for such kind of a diagnostic and alternative education therapies here in India?
So allopathy is just one tool in the box for healthcare diagnostics and healthcare prevention and healthcare management. It is just one of the tools. What we do not understand is we have a lot of things just in our backyard. The Ayurveda, namma hittalalle madhide, but the problem with us is we don't take that on board. We want somebody else's house medication and not our own backyards. So what I'm trying to say is, it is an amalgamation of systems. Unani has got its benefits. Ayurveda has got its benefits. They're literally Chinese. Every system of medication has its strengths. So I think it is in our best interest that we adapt the best of all. Let me give you an example. There is a place called as, there's an Ayurvedic resort run by Dr. Matthias. I don't know the name. It's somewhere in Whitefield. I forgot it. Every year, Prince Charles comes with Camilla to spend 3 weeks. Every year. And you know, he's into yoga, he's into meditation, he's into mud bath, he's into vegetarian organic food, and he goes after 3 weeks having been rejuvenated. So what I'm trying to get to is, yes, there is no one thing, there's a combination of number of things that you need to adapt. Let us stick to our traditional practices, good, healthy vegetarian diet rich in garlic, cumin, things that have rich antioxidants, the fresh food we eat, garlic, ginger, green chili, turmeric, coriander, chakka, patta. These are all rich spices which are rich in antioxidants. But we prefer the fast food. We prefer a carcinogenic food than healthy food. We prefer a ready meal rather than a cooked meal. I think what I'm trying to say is, get back to our roots, get back to our nature, get back to our culture. The practice of drinking water, keeping water in the copper pots, it's long gone. The copper ions that are released are antioxidants. They are anti-carcinogenic, but we don't use them. What do we do instead? We use plastic bottles. Plastic bottles left in hot sun in the car releases carcinogens, and we want to consume that. So things like this, let us get back to our roots. Let us get back to our culture. Microwaves, the biggest gift the Westerners have given, which is a big disaster. Reheating the food changes the bacteria, makes them carcinogenic. The Western dining tables, again, a big disaster for healthcare. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, there are positive things in all of them. We have to adapt the good things and not to forget our own culture. Diagnostic tests, they help to a certain extent, but they are not foolproof. They are not 100%. To have an annual health check is important, but you can still miss a lot of things. So important to attend to the symptoms, and when you have symptoms, to attend to the doctors, not to ignore saying that I've had my health check last year. That's what I would say, Ramesh. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Doctor. And the place you spoke about is Saukhya, which is run at Whitefield.
That's right. Saukhya, you're absolutely right. It's run by Matthias and his wife.
Dr. Matthias and his wife, yes. Any other questions? I don't think there are.
Yes, Sana has a question.
Yes, is there someone? Okay. So thank you so much, Doctor. And now I request Sunita Michandani to kindly propose a vote of thanks. Sunita?
Namaste, Dr. Narasimhaiah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. There is a question. This is the last question.
There is a question. Sajani, there's one more question.
In the chat. In the chat.
There is a say prevention is better than cure. So we can do yoga, pranayama, meditation, etc. in the early stage itself. Thank you, Doctor.
No, the other question about that by Sanat.
And fourth, not doing nothing is right option. What does he mean?
What I'm asking, not the age, but the stage of cancer. Is it third or fourth? Not doing nothing is right option.
Well, sir, okay. To re-emphasize, decision making is multifactorial. Okay. Say, for example, somebody is 40 and they've got disease in the lymph nodes, and the cancer that the patient has got is a good cancer, so to say a bowel cancer. You can go with a curative intent, because the chemotherapy can downstage the disease, it can take out the cancer, and majority of the times they do okay. Stage 4 metastatic disease. If somebody is young, we push the boundaries, we do liver resection, we do lung resection, and get them the length of survival. If somebody is 80, you probably do not want to do anything too aggressive. And it is at that point we say, no, let us keep them comfortable, let us keep them symptom-free, and let us actually give them an opportunity to have a dignified, end, so to say. So what I'm trying to say is, it is not one treatment for all. It's no one size fits all, and it's really horses for courses. That's what I would say. Hope that answers your question, sir.
Now, with that was the last question. We will go on to the vote of thanks by Sunita Michandani. It's over to you, Sunita.
Namaste, Dr. Narasimhaiah. I hope I can be seen and heard.
Yes, madam.
Thank you very, very much for this a very detailed talk that you have just given us. You provided us with so much information and tried to clear some of the gray areas in our mind about this particular disease. And it's also very heartening that you've told us that there are so many alternative ways of overcoming it with our habits, our food habits, our living habits, and above all, the power of our mind, which is possibly the greatest thing that we could perhaps nurture. So I thank you once again on behalf of the School of Ancient Wisdom for giving us so much of your time and taking all the questions with so much detail. Thank you. Namaste.
And before we go to the Loka Samasta, there's one more chat. Thanks for the wonderful insights on maintaining health and managing cancer. Totally agree as a hypnotherapist and mind-body healer.